welcome to the Museum of Portuguese History here at Lisbon. As you wait for your guide, we'll present you with an itinerary of what you will learn throughout the tour. From 1415 to 1822, the Portuguese Empire engaged in trade with African coastal ports to satisfy the increased interest on trade and commerce. But as trading continued to be more promising, Portugal continued its efforts to take over and maintain the Indian Ocean trading network. But soon Portugal lost power over its trading ports and held only colonial holdings in India and Brazil in the 1800s. Throughout this period, Portugal faced resistance from the indigenous people from the regions it occupied. Portugal's decision to move westward was in large part due to close proximity to the Atlantic, which made its decision to move westward more influential. While waiting, don't be hungry. Our cafeteria has all new food.
Olé, Chalmay. Sorry, got carried away there. Hello, I'm the Director of Tours here at the Museum of History in Lisbon, Portugal. I will guide you through the breakthroughs, pitfalls, jokes, and moments where the king stood choked through interactive, state-of-the-art statue. Yes, you heard it. Singular, not plural. Our gender-neutral statues can conform to whatever person we here would like it to imitate. Successes by the likes of Bruce Jenner in 2015 gave innovators new motivation to invent this amazing creation. Anyway, let's get on with the tour.
The 1400s, yes. The land was clear, the cows were grazing, and the nomads were naked. Ha! We're talking about the 1400s, not before Common Era. This is a land ravaged by wars and battles, and the Portuguese Empire was at its grassroots. After separation from Rome and nomadic barbarians, we now come to our first major individual, Henry the Navigator.
Hola! I am Henry the Navigator, and I was the first major explorer to seek out new lands for Portugal. After the Iberian Peninsula was secured by Portuguese leaders, I led expeditions to discover new lands for Portugal. After significant battles with the Muslims of Africa, I wished to know how far their territory ended, and I also wished to involve Portugal in the illustrious spice trade. Europeans at the 1450s only knew as far as Cape Bojador at the time, but my valiant exploration as well as missionary efforts allowed me to reach further than before in my expeditions. I must say the innovation of various new ships aided me in my adventures. By the 1450s, my explorations were being sent off my crew, and in 1460 I died. My efforts had many benefits and losses. My biggest loss is sadly my brother, who was captured by some hostile natives, and I miss him dearly. But the benefits were that I was able to send my crew to capture some islands, most notably the Madeira Islands, which were used for cultivating and producing valuable goods. I even found enough gold to produce new gold coins in Portugal. Wow, what an amazing life I had. Oh, I almost forgot. I lived a chaste life, free from women that may tempt me, because I became one of the first records of homosexual people.
Portugal colonized these islands, and along with Spain started a revolution of Atlantic exploration and colonization. This was creating new excitement and discovery, but also inevitably caused tensions between Portugal and Spain. We now go to an expert who will show you and break down an important document, the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494. To you, expert.
This document was a key turning point in the expansion of Portugal and how it shaped the successes of the nation. Spain and Portugal were zealous in their expansions, and when they reached disagreements on land allocation, they drafted this treaty. This treaty allowed Spain exclusive rights to the land 370 leagues west of the African coastline, and Portugal to the land east of it.
This was a weak point in Portuguese culture. Those who are nationalistic towards Spain like to say that while the Spanish discovered America, what did Portugal do? Well, that will be answered to you with a poem by our statue.
Oh, I am Vasco da Gama. Call me Vasco for short. I want to sail from Portugal to India's port. On the year 1497, I left Portugal with dreams of achieving travel heaven. I traveled around the Cape of Africa and set sail for land in sight, Mozambique. Islam was their religion and Christianity was their hate. Peacemaking was trouble because I had no freight. Run, run, run became my fate. Anger became hatred and we looted Muslim ships until we saw Mombasa, our next stop on our trip. Now in 1498, 6 days was a halt. The Sultan didn't forewarn us and we tortured their people. Thank Christ we escaped, or our members would have been at fault. At our current pace, we may have time for another stop, but I hope their religion as Islam is not the case, because our heads is what they will chop. Malindi became our next stop, and as Sultan was nice, he gave us a guide to India at literally no price. The year was 1498, and the month was May. Calicut was the city we reached along the Indian coast. I am successful in linking Portugal and India by sea, but oh, people will never know how humiliating it was for me.
Thank you for that, Vasco. Portugal was very successful in this venture, and soon after, Portugal set up colonies, trading posts, and soon a viceroy was set to govern over India, bringing Portuguese ideals. Not only did they do this, but they set monopolies on trade and put taxes on trade and on all ships that traded to and between the ports of West India.
Kannur, Kochi, Calicut, and even Vijayanagar were under Portuguese control,
Bringing immense wealth to Portugal.
See if any of you guys feel like being an emperor after this. Remember, as the Portuguese and Spanish demonstrated, exert control over all aspects of indigenous life. Next, we will lead you to our next segment on Cabral, the one who brought Portugal the knowledge of Brazil.
Hello, I am Pedro Alvarez Cabral, the one who founded Brazil. I arrived in the new land in 1500 and I was met with Indians who hunted and gathered. I was originally intending to go to India, so I stopped, gathered supplies, and went on my way after a brief rest in this new land.
Told you it would be short. I will now show you this exhibit on Portuguese dominance on the world, or what the leaders thought their dominance was. As you can see, Portugal exerted its dominance through trade routes and coastal ports. It never ventured too far inland. Lastly, a guide will give you a review of what Portugal did in Brazil.
Brazil was the government incurring large revenues from taxes and factories in India and African colonial holdings. To a lesser extent, it produced from its colonies in Brazil as well. Due to the low immunity of the locals, many died and a lot of possible revenue was lost. The few Indians as well as African slaves was largely contributed through sugar plantations and gold mining. Throughout the 1600s, sugar plantations and exports contributed 5% of the total revenue. Salvador was named the capital of Brazil in 1549 and up to 15 colonial holdings were held. Finally, by 1800, the loss of many other colonial holdings and political resistance by natives allowed Brazil to gain independence from Portugal, with low enmity remaining among the two nations.
Thank you for that. Sadly, our time together has come to an end. Portugal was one amazing empire. It, unfortunately, declined when the natives and allies turned against the crown, and Portugal lost most of its trade monopolies and colonial holdings. Brazil and few Indian colonies were all that was left by the 1800s, and in those places, even now, you can see Portuguese dialects and influences. But other than that, it is all but a part of history. From rising in Roman ashes, to exploring the Atlantic and trading along the African coastline, to establishing colonies and creating trade monopolies, Portugal was truly wealthy, in more ways than one. Simple acts of greed and cruelty, and in the end, lack of manpower, caused the fall of this empire.